I went to the Financial SubPac this morning. Last month, the Financial SubPac asked us to go back and provide some additional data for them on our model. So essentially what the APS allocation task group voted on was to keep the same demographic and workload splits as we have for this current year. So 50-50 for the 10 large, 55-45 for the balance of state. Keep a vertical settlement and keep the 5% floor in place. The one change that the group had recommended was that we realign the actual demographic census data that we use. Now that we've had another year of income data collected in CAPS, we have a better sense of our folks. And so for this current year, it's based on the U.S. Census data for adults over 55 who are at 300% or less of poverty in income. And with the new data, we were able to look at that and make a change to that. So now we will be looking at adults 65 and older at 300% or less of poverty, and adults under age 65 at 200% of poverty level or less. That helps take into account the higher population of younger adults that we're seeing. We've had a slight increase in the number of adults with IED that we have been serving since that mandatory reporting bill went into effect. And generally, that group tends to have an SSI income, and so that's why the difference between 300% of poverty for the over 65 and the 200% of poverty under. The SubPAC was in favor of the changes that we had recommended, but had asked us to look at the floor because we had said keep the 5% floor with the intent of completely removing the floor from the allocation in the next 2 to 4 years. And the group said that was too long. The Financial SubPac has been asking the allocation task groups to start moving away from having any floor so that counties are getting their actual true allocation. And so yesterday we met briefly and kind of modified that we would recommend keeping the 5% floor for this coming year, fiscal year 19, with the intent of removing the floor altogether for the fiscal year 20 allocation. And so that's what we presented at the SubPAC this morning, and that was passed unanimously. So our next step is to create a one-page fact sheet that kind of outlines what we talked about, how we came to this decision, essentially how we looked at the correlations between demographics and workloads in the various counties, defining our data set, and we've already provided the Financial SubPAC several different data sets that compared, like last year's data that we used for this year's allocation and what that allocation would have been using the same data with the new demographics in the formula. And then what would it look like with the new proposed formula with a 5% floor and a 15% floor and then no floor, so that county directors can start seeing how their funding is going to shift so that they can start preparing for that 2020 timeframe. So that will be included as part of the fact sheet. The plan then is for the Financial SubPAC, Clint and Tracy Garcher from Mesa are the co-chairs. They will present this at PAC in April. And this presentation will simply be presenting the allocation method, that fact sheet, the data, so that they can start reviewing it. It's not the actual PAC submittal for the PAC vote. It's really about, we're presenting this to you so now you can take it back to your regions and you can let it percolate in your head, and then in May, come back and vote on that methodology. It also gives the PAC some time in April to ask if there's any other additional information or questions they have of the task group, so that we can come back and meet as a group to address any of their additional questions they might have. And so they've asked Hal and I to be there at the April and May PAC just to answer some questions if we need to.